Today's daf we're going to be learning is Nedarim Daf Mem Vav. It's the daf for Shabbat. Today's daf is sponsored by Debbie Engelin Eigels in memory of her father Hank Eigels, Henach ben Mendel Zichrono Lebracha, to mark the end of his shloshim. May his neshama have an aliyah. We're going to get started now with a quick review of the Mishna, beginning of the chapter that we started in Friday's daf. Hashutafim shenedru hana'ah ze mizeh. We have people who own jointly a courtyard. Asurim likanes l'chatzer. If they're forbidden to benefit from the other, they're not allowed to enter the courtyard. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov omer ze nechnas l'toch shelo v'ze nechnas l'toch shelo. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says no, each one can go in. And we talked about this in the previous shiur, that most of the commentaries think that the issue here is a retroactive designation or not. Okay, and which means that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds there is retroactive designation. So when I go into this courtyard and use for my purposes, that's basically determining that this is mine, and the rest of it is yours. And the rabbis say you can't do that, and that's why you're actually benefiting from the other one's part of the courtyard. Today we're going to see exactly in which case do they debate which type of courtyard, how big is the courtyard. We'll get back to that later. The Gemara continues now, and even according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, but both are forbidden, so each forbidden for each other, can't put there a millstone, an oven, or raise chickens. Why not? So the Ran says the reason is because even though it says in Parakhas Karabatim in Baba Batra, where all these issues of joint courtyards is discussed, that generally they don't care if you put some item in their courtyard if we're sharing it. But, says the Ran, but if they do care, then they can stop. In other words, maybe normally people don't. But theoretically, you could say, I don't want you putting that in my courtyard. And then basically, if you're forbidden to benefit from me, I could stop you from doing this. And even though it says, even though generally people don't charge money for this or don't care about this, we already learned this, that things that normally people don't care, like people walking through your garden, people don't usually care, but if you can't benefit, that's considered a problem. So that's one possible explanation. Other people say, no, it's specifically these items. And then, according to that, it wouldn't really make sense why specifically these. But according to others, these are things that cause more of an issue. So why? Tanur and Rechaim, often people rent out their space or let people come and use. So if we have a joint courtyard and I let people come use, I put up my Rechaim there, people come use them, my millstone, then it's going to get very crowded, and that's going to basically encroach on your borders. Okay, or a tarnagol, if it's the chicken, first of all, the chickens could theoretically run around, right, and kind of go into your side. And I just have to remember, because I saw there was another reason. I just forgot what it was with the chickens. Right, that they might eat your food, okay, because the chickens, right, might come and eat something that's yours. That's another possible issue. Okay, now we're going to move on to a next case in the Mishna. The first case was each of us are forbidden to the other. Now the Mishna gives a case where one of them was forbidden to the other. Lo yikanes l'chatzer. The one who was forbidden can't come into the courtyard. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov omer, again, he's going to disagree. Same thing. The one who's forbidden can say, I'm going into my side. I'm not using your part. So they have the exact same argument. The Ran says there's really no need for this. The whole reason they brought this was for the next line. But they forced the one who took the vow to sell their part. Now, why is this? And who exactly is the one who's noder? That's going to be a question the Gemara is going to raise. But the real reason, and this is the Ran points this out, that this is why it says it here, because since it's imbalanced, okay, if each of us can't, then we're not worried. If you can't use my part, I won't use your part. I'm basically not really concerned of any accidental use maybe. But if you can use my side, but you can use the courtyard, but I can't, I might get jealous and I might actually end up using it because you're using it. So why shouldn't I use it? Right? We both have houses that open into the courtyard. It seems unfair. So because of that, we make, now exactly who we make and who sells it, we're going to get into that soon. So I'm not going to even get into the different opinions, because the noder could be theoretically the one who vowed the other person is forbidden. Like I said, you can't benefit from me, so then I have to sell my part. Or is it I forbade, let's say, myself to benefit from you, and then I have to sell my part. Okay, so we'll get to that later in the Gemara. Haya echad min hashuk mudar be'echad mehem hana'ah. Let's say there was a different party. Okay, not one of us. One of these people, random person, was forbidden to one of us. So now, lo yikanes l'chatzer, they can't come into the courtyard. Same machloket. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov yachol lomar lo l'toch shelcha v'chani nechnas ve'eni nechnas l'toch shelcha. Again, they could come into the courtyard and say, listen, I'm using the other person's part, I'm not using your part. In which case, again, it works. Okay, so again, same type of idea. We have a machloket, what they say about this. Okay, so the Ran here says, what's the unique thing about this? Because if they have the same debate. So he says, Lashmuina rebooted to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Again, to teach you that even according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, afilu alacha ben hashuk ain't shutaf yachol la'akev. Okay, that you, even according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, or according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, even if it's some external person, and it's not that we share the same courtyard, now he's just being lenient in that case, he's even lenient in a case where it's someone totally disconnected, we're still going to allow him to come into the courtyard. Okay, now again, you have to remember, it's hard for me if he can't come into the courtyard, maybe he can't pay me rent for something I want, or, it might affect one of the people in the courtyard, and maybe that's why he's willing to be lenient about it. Hamudal han'ami chavero, different type of case now. Again, one is not allowed to benefit from another. So let's say you can't benefit from me, and I own a bathhouse or an olive press, and I rent it out to people. If I get, now we're going to have to explain what tfisat yad is, but I get some of the profits, let's say, okay? I get some of the profits from the rental. Okay, so I rent it out, not just for a set price, but I get paid part of the profits. Then, if you can't benefit from me, then you can't go in there. But if I don't make profit on it, let's say I just get a rental fee, then it's permitted. You're not really benefiting directly from me because I'm not really the one who's making the profits off of this. Last case in the Mishna, your house will be konam for me, that I will not go in there, or your field will be konam, that I will not buy it. This is like the same as kikari alecha. It's just the opposite. I'm saying your kikar is forbidden to me, right? So your house is forbidden to me, your field is forbidden to me. Then if you die or you sold to someone else, I can use it. Konam bayit zeh shani nechnas, usadeh zeh shani lokech, meit oshemachor la'acher asur. But if I said this house, this field, then already if you die or sold it to someone else, then it's forbidden. Right? Because then I was focusing on specifically the house, not having anything to do with who owned it. So now the Gemara asks the following question. So they ask the following question. We understood nadru hana'az emizeh, that means each one vowed they're not going to benefit from the other. And that's the case where they have a machloket. But what if they forced, meaning I forbade you and you forbade me? Okay? I said you can't benefit from me, and then you said in reaction, you can't benefit from me. Is it the same law? Now, why would it be any different? Well, let's see. Do we say in the case of nadru, each one forbade themselves? That's when they have a machloket. But in the case of they each force the other, you could call that anus. It's not my fault that I can't use your courtyard. And therefore, right, it wasn't my idea to forbid benefit of myself, to benefit from your stuff. You did it to me and I did it to you. So each of us are considered anusim, forced into this. Now, what's the difference if you're forced into it? So the Ran adds a whole other element that we didn't really discuss until now. And this is really what the question is. So if you look at the first, where the Gemara starts in the Ran, in the first Yibor Matchil, he says, Klomal, Dilma Kulu Sfira Lehudi Yesh Brera. Maybe everybody really holds, this is like a different suggested understanding. Everybody holds this Brera. Umidina Afilu bin Adrushari. And theoretically, even the rabbis were permitted in the case where I forbade myself. I should be able to use your courtyard theoretically. But Ela de Rabbanan Savre Kansinam. But the rabbis hold that we're going to penalize you. Basically, you shouldn't have done that. Okay, you shouldn't have forbidden someone else, right? We shouldn't have forbidden yourself to benefit from someone in your courtyard, that's just not a good plan. Right? First of all, we don't like vows in general. It's not exactly clear here why you should be penalized, but maybe it's just a penalty. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said, he doesn't think there's any penalty. And therefore, now why would this be? So, okay, basically we're going to say the machloket isn't, is there brera, isn't there brera? This is a whole different understanding. According to this, and then the Ram points out that this would disagree with Ravina in Bava Kama, right? Who said basically that it's Ravina and Bava Kama, we talked about this in the previous class, had said that this machloket is the brera machloket, right? It says this, there he points out our sugya and says it has to do with brera. Is there brera? Isn't there brera? But, right, retroactive designation. But according to this explanation, it has nothing to do with the retroactive designation. Everyone agrees you can do retroactive designation, and theoretically, each should be able to use the other part. But what? The rabbi said, we're going to penalize you for doing this. So now, that's only we're going to penalize you if you said, I forbid myself to benefit from you. And then the other one said, I forbid myself to benefit from you. But if I forbade you to benefit from me, then we're not going to penalize you. It wasn't your fault. And if you forbade me, then we're not going to penalize me because it wasn't my fault. Okay, so basically, that's the question. O Dilma, or do we say, or do we say, no, the rabbis disagree in both cases because it's an issue of brera or not brera. Again, that's the Ran's understanding of the question. To which the Gemara says, Tashma, let's learn it from here. The wording of the Mishnah. The second case in the Mishnah is, one is mudal hana'ah from the other. Now, we assume that when you say mudal hana'ah, it means, now, it's not a fair assumption, but right now they're going to suggest, mudal hana'ah means you're forbidden to benefit from me. Why? Because I forbade you. Okay? I took the vow. To which the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. Right? And then what do you prove? Well, it says mudal hana'ah, and it says the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So it must mean, even if you were forced into it, the rabbis still disagree, in which case we hold the rabbis hold there's no brera. There's no retroactive designation. To which the Gemara says, no. Just because it says mudal hana'ah doesn't mean that the other person forbade them. No, it could be, I forbade myself. Okay? I'm nadur hana'ah mechavero. One of us forbade ourselves. And that could be the case. How do we know this really works? And here we get to that line that we weren't sure how to read. Hachinami mistabra, we can further prove this. Dikatane seifa. V'kofin et hanoder linkor et chalko. He forced the one who took the vow to sell their share. Now, who's the one who took the vow, and on who did he take the vow? So right now we want to prove what? That I took the vow for myself. So now, that I'm the one who took the vow, and I'm then forced to sell. That makes sense. I took a vow. Now I put myself in a situation where I might benefit from your part. Therefore, I better sell my house and my part of the courtyard so that I'm out of there entirely and I don't accidentally use it. But if you told me I can't benefit, you took a vow that I can't benefit from you, well, why do we force me? You're going to now force me to sell it? I'm anus. I didn't get myself into the situation on purpose. Now we're going to force me to sell it. And in fact, the Rush says, if that's the case, anybody could basically, you want to get rid of your neighbor? So make a neder that they can't benefit from you. And then they're going to have to be forced to sell their property. And then you've gotten rid of your neighbor. That's crazy, right? It's unfair, I would say. So therefore, it seems, so now they're basically proving that you can't prove it's mudar hana'ah means someone else made you take the neder, because it could really mean nadur. Okay, and they use that they use the kofin. It must be the noder is the one who took the vow on themselves. Okay, but what's interesting here, and this connects with the different machlokah we saw, and that's why I want to bring it up. There's a machlokah between the Rambam and the Ran about what the noder is. We explain like the Ran that the noder is, I forbade myself, and therefore I'm forced to sell my property because it was my fault for getting myself into this situation, right? So I have to sell my property. The Rambam says, and why is that? Because if you did it to me, right? What did I do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong at all because, right? And let's say, what's the other explanation? The noder could be one of two people. Right, the madir is going to, right, the mudal is the one who, you took a vow about me, we can't force me to sell my property, that everyone agrees with. But the noder could be either, I vowed about myself, that's the way the Ran understands it, and then I'm forced to sell. What if It's, I vowed to forbid you to benefit. Comes the Rambam and he says, if I vowed you to benefit from me, I said, you can't benefit from me. Comes the Rambam and says, I have to sell my property. Now the Ran says, why would I have to sell my property? I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, I did vow, but it's not me who's the issue right now. It's you might transgress. Okay, and you might remember that we had a machloket a long time ago. We discussed the Ran holds, if I make a vow that you can't benefit from me, and then you go benefit from me, you're responsible, not me. You're liable. But the Rambam disagrees. And that's why this works perfectly with our machloket, because the Ran says, of course, I can't be forced to sell something. If I forbade the property to you, you're the one who's going to sin. So you would theoretically have to sell the property, which that we said is unfair. That's the way I could kick you out. The Rambam says, if I took the vow about you and you don't keep the vow, lo yachel dvaro. The whole thing of keeping vows is keeping to your word. I'm the one who said you can't do it. So I'm the one whose words are desecrated. I'm the one liable. And therefore, the Rambam says, if I forbade you from benefiting from me, I'm responsible to sell the property because I'm the one who has to prevent sin from happening, because at the end, it's going to be me who transgresses the sin. So therefore, this is machloket when they each say kofinat hanodel, the noder of who? Noder on yourself, according to the Ran, or noder about somebody else. And that all depends if you're responsible for taking a vow about somebody else. That's the Rambam, you are, and therefore you can then be forced to sell your property. According to the Ran, no. And therefore not. Okay. That was an aside in terms of a machloket between Rishon and how to understand the Gemara. If you didn't catch that, it's okay. We could just go with the simple reading of the Ran. It was me about my own property, and therefore I am forced to sell my property because I got myself into this situation. I got to make sure that I don't sin, and therefore I'm forced to sell it. Amar Rabba Amar Ze'ed. Now we get into, moving now to Amud Bet, we get into a debate about, we're going to have Rabba's version of Ze'eri, and then Rabbi Yosef's going to say this doesn't make any sense. We're going to go with a different version, and he brings a different version of Ze'eri, of what Ze'eri said. So Rabba says, we go back to the first case. Shutafim shenadru azan izeh, two people own shared property. They said we can't each benefit from the other. They can't go into that courtyard. What kind of courtyard are we talking about? This goes to the beginning, first sugya Baba Batra, about sugyot, about a courtyard that can be split or not split. Okay, there's courtyards that are too small to be split into two, because everybody needs a 4 by 4 cubit space. If it's less than double that amount, 8 by 4 cubits, then we can't split it. If it's 8 by 4 cubits, then we split it in half. You got 4 by 4, I got 4 by 4. So which type of courtyard are we talking about? Machloket sheyesh bo kedei chalukah. The debate is, according to the first reading, Rabba's reading of Ze'eri, if you can split it in half. Aval ema kedei chalukah divrei hakol mutal. But if you can't split it in half, it's too small, then everyone agrees that it's permitted. Why is it permitted for us to use it, even though it's yours and mine, right? Theoretically, you might say the opposite. It's so small that we can't claim this is mine. Say, if we went into this business deal together knowing that we're never going to be able to split this, what does that mean? Well, it means that some days I'm going to need it and some days you're going to need it, or some moments I'm going to need it, some moments you're going to need it. It means that from the beginning, it was clear that there's going to be some moments where it's fully mine. So if I can't benefit from you, I can still use it because it was clear from the beginning that I was going to be the one at some points who was going to have complete control over this courtyard. So therefore, everyone agrees in that case, it's permitted for me to use it. The machloket is when it can be split, but it wasn't yet split. So do we hold breira that once I use this part, we could say retroactively, oh, that's your designated space? And the rabbi said, no, you can't do that. Right? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said you could. Sounds logical. But Amar le Rav Yosef, he says, wait a minute. Hare Beit Knesset. Beit HaKnesset, a shul, is a public space. It's owned by the community. It can't be split up. It's tikamisha eimbo kadeh chalukadami. It's like someone who has area that can't be split. And it's non, and it says in the Mishna, shnehem asurim b'davar shelo toha'il, that both are forbidden for things that are public property. Now, if both agree that it's forbidden, and what did we say? Things that don't have chalukah, everybody agrees, if it couldn't be split up, that each person can go in. Everyone agrees. And here it says something that can't be split up. Somebody says it's forbidden. So somebody has to say no in that case. It has to be either rabbis or Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Presumably it's the rabbis, to which El Amar of Yosef Amar Ze'eri, Machloket she'ein ba kedei chalukah. The machloket must be when you can't split it up. And then the rabbis will say, you can't go in if you can't split it up. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov would say, no, you can if you want, right? And that's the machloket, and that's why the source about the Beit Knesset goes like the rabbis. Aval yesh ba kedei chalukah, but if you can split it up, now this is the same logic as before, it's just moving everything over a little bit, divrei kol asul. Instead of saying that's where there's a machloket, now we're going to say everyone forbids it. Okay, even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov doesn't think there's breira in a case where it can be split. There he says, no. Question is why, and the question is, what if we do split it then? Once we split it, can we then say, or not even? So the Rashba says, even once you split it, it doesn't work. Because why? Because in the beginning, each person had rights to theoretically any part that they wanted. And one could have said, I never was willing to give you that part. And therefore, you can't use a part and say retroactively it was designated, even according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. That's the way the Rashba understands it, even after you split it up. The Rambam, both of these, by the way, are quoted in the Ran. The Rambam says, no, of course, once you split it up, then of course I can use my part and you can use your part because we've divided it. The issue is only until we've divided it. Since you theoretically could say, I want that part, right? Even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov won't allow retroactive designation. So that's, in the end, how we understand it, the way Rav Yosef says. Okay, but again, the machloket is if it can't be split up, if it's too small. Once it's big enough to be split up, nobody permits it, actually. Amar Rav Huna halakha ke Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, v'chein amar Rabbi Eliezer halakha ke Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Even though normally we don't hold by a minority opinion, but it's known that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, his Mishnayot are kav and aki. There's all different ways to understand what that means, but basically it means they're excellent. His opinions are excellent. We rely on him, and therefore we hold like him. Some people say, why do you need to say we hold like him here if we know in general that we hold like him? So some people say here maybe because of the breira issue, and the breira issue comes up in other places. It's not so clear we hold by breira. Maybe that's why they want to point out we do in this case. Anyway, some discussions exactly as to why the Gemara needed to tell us this. Last part for today. So then we distinguish between having tfisa yad, not having tfisa yad. So what is tfisa yad? Kama tfisa yad? How much is considered tfisa yad? Rav Nachman lemechza l'shlisha l'ravia. If you make profits, either half the profits, a third of the profits, or even a quarter of the profits, that's considered that you have tfisa yad. So if I rent out my space to you and I get profits of it, of a quarter, half, or a quarter, a third, or half, then if there's someone else who's forbidden to benefit from me, they can't come and use that, whatever that property is. Aval b'bitzir lo, but any less than that, no problem. Okay, that's the way we're going to read it right now. In a minute, we'll suggest a different reading. Abai amal afilu b'tzir asul. Abai says even less than, let's say it's an eighth. Any kind of profit is a problem. Heichidami jashari. So when would it be permitted? Because it did say in the Mishna, if you don't have tfisa yad, and we are talking about that you're getting rent for this. To makabel b'taska. Okay, different explanations of what taska is, but it seems that it's where you get like a lump sum fee. Okay, I rent it out to you. You pay me X amount for the property. It doesn't have anything to do with the profits whatsoever. It's all a matter of amount. Okay, according to Rav Nachman, has to be at least a quarter. According to Abai, any kind of profit you make, if I make any sort of percentage, doesn't matter. That's considered I have use. I have rights in the property, in which case the person forbidden to benefit from me can't use it at all. But if I'm just getting a one lump sum fee or something like that, or they're just paying, let's say I'm paying property taxes or something like that, then you're paying me the property taxes or something along those lines, then basically it's not considered that I have any sort of benefit from it, because the benefit has nothing to do with anyone using it or anything like that. That's one explanation. The problem is bitzir means less than. But some people have a girsa that it doesn't say bitzir, it says bebeitzim. Okay, now eggs. What do eggs have anything to do with this? So there's all sorts of interesting explanations. Like, for example, so let's read again. Rav Nachman says a quarter, a third, a half. But eggs, no. So what do eggs have to do with it? So there's a bunch of different explanations. I'll give you two of them. One is if you sell eggs outside, let's say, or I sell eggs. I rented it out to you. You use it as a bathhouse, but I sell eggs right in the front. I have like a little stand. If I sell eggs there, comes Rav Nachman and he says, right, that was my deal. I said, okay, you can rent my space, but I'm going to sell my eggs in the front door there, in the eggs entrance. So Rav Nachman says that's not considered the live use of the property because it's something having nothing to do with the bathhouse. It has to do with my eggs, or nothing to do with the olive press. It's eggs. Abai says even eggs are a problem because I'm gaining something from that space. Okay, and only if I'm a Kabal Taska, that would be different, right? Which we explained already is, I get this one lump sum fee from you and that's it. Some people say eggs are not really eggs. They're, let's say I use clay, and the clay I shape into shape of eggs and I leave them there. Like I'm using the space for something for me. That shows I have tfisat yad. I have something to do with that space. Still mine. I reserve part of it for my use. Then already someone else can't benefit if they're forbidden to benefit from me. And then Abai says even eggs, right? I'm sorry. So Rav Nachman says that wouldn't count. Abai says that would count. Okay, that would be considered that you wouldn't be able to benefit from it. And that's the machloket. And then, according to those explanations about the eggs, it seems that a quarter, a third, a half doesn't mean exactly. Even 10%, 2%, it wouldn't matter. Any kind of percentage gain would be an issue, according to Rav Nachman. It's just something else, like selling eggs or storing your eggs there or something like that, or storing your pottery there. That would be something that's excluded. And I would say even that's included as well. Okay, with that, we'll finish our daf. And wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom or Shavua Tov.